Welcome to the start of a brand new series. We all like to come up with ideas for Super Smash Bros. Every now and then, and I know I've always had a lot of fun doing it. Smash speculation ebbs and flows as new games come and go, and it may ramp up again depending on what happens in the coming months. There's always a lot of talk about characters in particular. Sometimes you see arguments for why they could or should get in. Sometimes you see them fleshed out into moveset ideas or etc. But I want to focus on something that gets overlooked. I want to talk about the concepts that go into a character's design, the broader ideas that help each new fighter stand out among the rest while feeling true to their identity from their own games. This won't be a full, rigid list of animations and attacks, but rather building blocks that'll help paint a picture of how the character would be able to stand amongst Nintendo's All-Stars. And where better to start than with the one generally considered the closest thing to a lock for the next game. For those of you who spent the last year and a half living under a rock, the Inklings are the stars of Nintendo's hit new franchise, Splatoon. A race of humanoid cephalopods who can shapeshift from kid to squid at will, the Inklings hail from Inkopolis, a sprawling civilization inhabited by a host of highly evolved, sapient sea creatures. No society is without its games, and the Inklings' national pastime is a series of team-based arena shooting competitions using ammunition based on the competitor's own naturally produced ink. Kind of gross when you think about it, like shooting people with your sweat. The most common of these are turf wars, where the objective is to cover more of the arena with your ink than your opponent can within a time limit. Splatoon has done very well for a brand new IP, selling an estimated 4.42 million copies as of last June, and proving that Nintendo does still know how to take fresh new ideas and run with them. So well, in fact, that a lot of people were surprised and confused when the Inklings were passed up on for Smash 4 DLC, getting no more than Mii costumes and a trophy. There are a handful of theories for why it happened, but my guess is that the IP was too new. They would have had to pull the trigger on the Inklings no later than around when the Smash ballot closed, meaning they would have been less than half a year old at the oldest. We've seen newer characters join the fight before, but they've always been from well-established series. We've never seen a character from a brand spanking new franchise get the nod. Perhaps Sakurai and the dev team consider such a thing too much of a risk, since it could take a while to see if a new IP is a perennial star in the making or just a flash in the pan. But if we're talking future Smash games, including a potential Smash 4.5 on the NX within the next year or so, Splatoon has proven it has staying power, and the Inklings are positioned to be prime candidates for the next installment. So, what would a playable Inkling be like in Super Smash Bros.? First off, let's talk about appearances. After all, fashion is a big deal for these guys. The Inklings would take after Villager, Wii Fit Trainer, Robin, and Corrin, and have 4 male and 4 female costumes, with the orange female and blue male serving as the defaults. Each costume would have their hair and their ink ammunition be a different color, and each would be sporting a different outfit, pulling from the many colors and gear that appear in Splatoon. And 2 of the alts would probably match the alternate Inkling amiibo that were released back over the summer. But for obvious reasons, none of the gear would have any extra effect or alter their stats in any way, so the Inklings would play the exact same regardless of which alt you choose. Statistically, I could see the Inklings having below average size, maybe around the same as Mario. They'd also have below average weight, and their ground mobility would be, surprise surprise, subpar under normal circumstances. One thing that wouldn't be below average though is their slow airspeed, to put greater emphasis on their on-stage game and staying grounded. Playstyle is a very important part of each character. Many of the creative decisions you have to make in the design process become much easier when you have a clear picture of what you want them to be able to do and what you want their overall game plan to be like. As for the Inklings, projectile zoning is a natural fit, using their ink-powered weaponry to keep a safe distance and limit their opponent's options, while still having many of their own options available. Their tools would also give them a focus on locking down the stage, giving opponents increasingly less room to run and harassing them wherever they turn. It makes sense for the Inklings to bring the feel of a turf war with them, and so their moveset would need to be built in a way that encourages the Inkling player to keep claiming territory. Sitting back in a corner and camping doesn't help much in a turf war after all. The key to accomplishing this? The Inkling's central gimmick, the ability to cover stage surfaces in ink just like in Splatoon. Areas hit by their projectiles or certain parts of their non-projectile attacks would be marked with ink that matches the color of the Inkling that created it. The more ink you can have down, the more it helps. as it would give Inklings a faster way of getting around. When running over ink, their dash would have them change into squid form, becoming significantly faster and getting a low profile that let them go right under a lot of projectiles and high attacks. They'd also gain a crawl when standing in ink, which would basically just be a slower version of the dash with more precision. Their greater mobility combined with their zoning tools would make it that much harder to get in or even get comfortable against a skilled Inkling. However, the ink would not directly affect opponents. Smash has so many intricacies in its ever-growing roster that it'd be a pain in the ass to, for example, have the ink slow down their mobility somehow and make it so they'd have to learn new combos and strings specifically for the Inkling matchup. It'd be kind of a cheap way to make the character better, and it'd make ink a little too overpowered, so I think it'd be for the better if the ink only affected the Inkling who put it there. For the sake of balance, there also needs to be some way for the ink to go away. Maybe it'd be dispersed by opponents' attacks, or maybe it'd just disappear over time. I don't know what the best way to handle it would be, but it'd need to be done in a way that still encourages Inkling players to expand their turf instead of just making a small area of ink and pitching a tent. And if there are multiple Inklings in play, they'd be able to paint right over opponents' ink with their own, just like in a real Splatoon match. With these ideas nailed down, or should I say painted in, let's go a little deeper and talk about moveset ideas. The Inkling's standard A attacks would come from the 5 weapon types in Splatoon: shooters, chargers, rollers, sloshers, and splatlings. Each of these has different strengths and drawbacks, and they need to be taken into account when deciding which move would use which weapon in order to portray them accurately. The splatter shot would be the Inkling's default weapon, the one used for the most attacks. I don't know if they'd keep it on them when idle, or if they'd just hold the last weapon they used like with Robin's tomes, or if they'd stay hands-free when idle and only pull weapons out of hammer space to attack, whichever would end up looking the best. Some ideas I've had for individual moves are a jab where the Inkling swings the splatter shot back and forth and then fires a short-range shot, a dash attack where they spin forward in squid form, an up smash where they use a slosher to fling ink upward, an up aerial where they swing the ink brush, or roller subtype for those who haven't seen it, in a circle above them, and a down smash and down air where they slam the splat roller downward. The Inkling's special moves would be built around sub-weapons, complementing their main arsenal just like in Splatoon. There's a handful to choose from, but here's what I'd go with. Splat Bomb is a projectile thrown in an arc that explodes with ink after a delay, Splash Wall to create a temporary barrier that hurts opponents and blocks enemy projectiles like Link's shield but can be destroyed early with physical attacks, Ink Mine is a delayed explosive that activates when anyone, friend or foe, gets near and splatters ink shortly after, and Super Jump as their recovery move. It's the only one that isn't a sub-weapon, but come on, it just works too well to pass up. And for the Inkling's final smash, the mighty Ink Strike, calling down a missile that creates a massive cyclone of ink, dealing heavy damage to anyone caught in the blast and painting a huge section of the stage. So, see how much thought can go into something so basic? The concept behind a character is like its heart and soul. Knowing how you want them to work in-game and what elements you want to bring in from their home series lets you paint that much clearer of a picture. Can you imagine what a playable Inkling would be like now? What moves one would use? How they would fight? The Inklings are masters of stage control, using the ranged and projectile attacks and the greater movement afforded by their ink to force opponents to play by their rules. I'm planning on making a full series out of this, with a new character concept or other Smash-related idea every other week. If you've enjoyed your time here, give the rest of my channel a look. I got other stuff related to Smash and various other Nintendo games, discussions, news, even Let's Plays. Every little bit of your support counts, so by all means, check it out. Next time, we'll be taking a look at a character who's been a fan favorite for a long time but with little to show for it. But all he may need are 1 or 2 things to happen to raise his odds dramatically. See you then, and stay fresh!